Hi everyone, it's Fingers here again. So I'm doing another video here on my applications of ComputerCraft set, and this is going to be a demonstration of a few things, but all to do with games. So I've been talking about games a lot in my lectures and things, but I think it's time I actually finally showed off a particular API I've been working with quite a lot recently, which is called GameUtils. It's a rather marvellous little thing. I've put a fair amount of effort into it to make it as useful as possible to people, so hopefully you can get a bit of use out of it. But essentially the point of GameUtils is to allow you to create sprites and animations, particularly with MP Pro, and then to use them to make your games, and to try and make game making itself as painless as possible. So a lot of fairly difficult code in here that's been done to sort of try and make your life easier. So they're fairly lengthy, fairly complicated bit of API, but it actually makes the game making process very, very simple. So I'm going to actually show off a few games that I've sort of built using GameUtils and how it works and things. So first off, I'll just show you a quick test of it running. So here we are. So essentially what you can see with GameUtils is that it is able to create sprites. So it takes in an MP profile, an MPP or an NFA file, and it essentially is able to draw it on the screen as a sprite. So it stores its X, its Y position, its movement, its bounding rectangles and things, and allows you to sort of manipulate those values as you want to. So big deal, right? You know, why is that useful when we can do that with PaintUtils? It does a few other things as well. So first off, it allows you to use animations, which is something that PaintUtils can't do. So if you want to use animations in your games, you can. You can use timers and things to update them, which is really cool. This particular test here is a demonstration indicating how collision detection works. So it is able to create rectangle collisions to tell whether or not the rectangles of two shapes are colliding. So if you imagine there's little imaginary rectangles around the outsides of these squares, when they intersect, then you can tell. And you also tell if the pixels collide. So you can see that that's working there nicely too. So yeah, it has a few nice features because some of this can be quite difficult to code up, and so this does it nice and efficiently and easily for you as well. It also handles drawing. There's a real issue with ComputerCraft and drawing, so instead of having to actually just run repaint and things all over again, you can use the buffer, and the buffer will draw the sprites directly to it and then sort of play it through. So, I mean, just to demonstrate, you can see this code is mostly comments and it's only about, it's about 70 lines long, so it's very short, and it has some fairly sophisticated behavior in it as well. So you can see here we handle the buffers here, which is just a matter of just initializing to begin with and then just drawing to the buffer every now and again as you need to. Loading is very easy, it's being done here. So yeah, you just specify where the file is and then its X and its Y positions, which is then handled as part of the GameSprite object, which is that OBJ1 thing there as well. And then you can just do collisions as easily as just saying it's a true or false with object collides with, just like that, R collides with P collides for rectangles and pixels respectively. So yes, yeah, so it's designed to be a hassle-free, very easy to use API. So I'll show you a few games that I've made. Well, not games, but things that could eventually become games with a bit of work. So we'll start with Racer. Racer's a nice one. And Racer demonstrates essentially just the basics of particularly using animations. Sorry, rather, we're going to go Racer itself. So here we are. So this is what the game looks like, and you can see here that we've used MP Pro to make these animations. This is a bit inspired by a game called, what was it called? Enduro, that's right, for the 2600, released a very long time ago, so a very old game, and it's sort of based on that. So you can see here that we've used a very simple series of animations and things here as well. The road is a series of animated sprites that is being updated to allow the lines to move and things. The player's car is just an animated sprite as well that just sort of can turn from left to right and things, as to the background is just one big sprite and things, and the rest of it's sort of done by hand. So, and you can see here that just drawing some very basic code here. I think this program is about 100 lines, so again, some very sophisticated behavior and what looks like a very complicated program that's being run very easily with just a very short bit of code. So yeah, it's a really handy way to make some nice, easy games. There's not much gameplay to it yet. I'm going to try and make it a bit more interesting, a bit more complicated, adding some traffic and things as well as some other features too. But yeah, for the moment you can see it's just a nice demonstration of how PaintUtils works and what you can do with it. So yeah, we'll show you the code. And usually people are terrified by the code that I demonstrate, but this shouldn't be scary at all. Like I say, we have a bit of details here in terms of how the game is running and the logic and things, but actually loading in the code is just a matter of just creating a bunch of variables in a list and just handling movement. Yeah, increasing, decreasing speed, which is being done there, handling the updates for the frame, speed and current frame thing there, and then just managing the way the distance is traveled through a series of timers. Which we do there, and occasionally we update by moving the road, so that's just done there. So as you can see, it's and then we just draw the code using the buffer that I showed you beforehand, just to stop that flicker and make things a bit faster. So, I mean, yeah, it's 127 lines, so it's a very short program, and yeah, it plays really nicely. So that's a fun one. I'll work more on this one, and hopefully I'll have a few more updates for it at some point or another. But yeah, just a nice, simple game. All right. Next thing I'll show you is platform, I think. Again, this isn't a complete game, this is just a very basic demonstration I made to demonstrate some different kinds of collision techniques. So as you can see here, this is it's a very simple platformer. So the player is the little chap up the top there, he can jump. As you can see, he collides nicely with the scenery, so he doesn't fall through it, he just lands on things and moves it. This took me about an hour and a half to make, I think. This is one very, very late night where I wanted to have something ready for one of the lectures, and so I whipped this together. Didn't take very long, very, very basic. Can just be done with GameUtils, just very quickly. This one doesn't use the rectangle or pixel collision specifically, although it certainly could do. What this does instead is it simply checks to see whether or not the pixels beneath the character or nearby the character are of a certain color. In this case, this dark grey color, and if they are, they collide with them. Otherwise, they don't. So, but I mean, you could use an overlay of a separate map, and you could test against that. So we could have any background you wanted to, and just test against the other map. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, we can walk through the walls here as well, which is really easy. I think when he collides with the lava, he passes away, so we'll just check that. There you go. So, yeah, really, really simple game. Again, didn't take long to write. Yeah, I think it's 2 paint files in GameUtils, and I think this one's even shorter than my racer. So yeah, you just have some very basic collision detection here as well. Runs through, and yeah, so it's 98 lines for that. For like I say, a perfectly capable platformer, you could turn that into a proper game quite easily. And yeah, it's about 100 lines, so really easy to write, a lot of fun, good system. So yeah, so that can be done quite well. Yeah, I suppose what I'm trying to show here, I'm probably trying to pitch this a bit too much. I think what I'm trying to sort of talk about is that really, there are limitations to the sorts of games you can make in ComputerCraft, but those limitations aren't hard, they're not fixed, and they can't restrict you too much, and you can't let them sort of get in the way. The next one I think I'll use music for, because music is important for this game. There we are. Yeah, I mean, and there are ways around those limitations and ways to sort of create games that are still really good fun, even though they might have other issues and problems with them as well. So, yeah, that's a good thing to sort of bear in mind when you're making your own cool games in ComputerCraft. Is you don't have to feel as though that you can't have a game that's complicated. You can't have a game that has some interesting mechanics. You can't have a game with bearable graphics, because there are ways around those problems, and if you're really clever about it and really know how to work the system, you can make some really cool things. So yeah, that's I think the thing I want you to sort of take away from this video. What you're watching here is a game I made pretty much on a whim. This took much longer than the other games, and it's a much longer game. This took I think a better part of half a day or so to get going. It's called Lumines, and it's of course based on the PlayStation game Lumines. I'm getting the names mixed up now. If you haven't heard of it, that's small blame, but it was a release title, I think, or at least it was a sleeper hit for the PlayStation Portable back when it was released in 2007. So yeah, so it was a small game for a system that didn't do as well as it should have. But yeah, it's like I say, it's a very fun game in its own right. I actually found this one on the Xbox Live Arcade just the other day. Someone gave me an Xbox for me to use, and on it had a demo for this game. So I sort of thought, well, give it a try, and it's fantastic. I had really good fun with it, and I played it for quite a while, and it was just a demo. It wasn't the full game. I sort of thought, well, I could actually get an Xbox Live account. I could splash out and buy this game, and then I thought, well, like I say, it's not that hard to figure out how it works. The mechanics they're fairly simple. This game, as you can see, has a few issues with the way that I've implemented it. There's a prime example right there. But in general, again, it's quite sort of reasonable as to how to figure it out. So really, it's just a matter then of just sort of making the algorithms and writing it. So yeah, saved myself a couple of bucks and had a bit of a fun time and got a cool game out of it at the same time. So yeah, a lot of really cool things that have come out as a consequence of all this work. This looks like a very simple game, and mechanically it is, but in implementation it's actually quite complicated. So I'll just show you how it works, because this is much trickier. This is much longer, this program, and you can see we have to manage the game state quite heavily. We need to make sure we keep a very careful track of what's running on. We have the skins thing here. We haven't done much of the skins yet, but essentially later on down the track these will be customizable. They have animated backgrounds and things using, again, GameUtils, which is nice. But yeah, we have to sort of make sure that we're printing the right sort of state depending on what kind of tile we're using. Whether not the tile's being deleted or being destroyed, rotating the bricks as well. The real trick, I think, was in deleting the bricks. And yeah, you see, this is a massive method, full of checks to try to make it as optimal as possible. But yeah, it's a very difficult job. So yeah, yeah, you can see just a huge number of checks necessary to make this game work. Yeah, so but yeah, see, with all this checking and thing, it's very heavy. Again, it's much longer. Nevertheless, like I say, even though it's a very long program, you know, this is there are things that you just can't do with this system. You're never going to be able to make a really good first-person shooter. You're never going to be able to make a really sophisticated simulation. But that doesn't mean you can't make games that aren't fun. You can't make things that you wouldn't want to play, you know, and you can't make things that would be, you know, worth your time. And most importantly, you can't make things that aren't fun to make. Find the idea of making a puzzle game with pedestrian, you can try making something like this, which is quite a bit more challenge than you may be expecting. If you find the idea of making a racing game that's just 2D and pixelated boring, you can try making one that's pseudo 3D and some more sophisticated graphic techniques and a bit more complicated maths. Lots of really cool things you can do. I'll probably be playing this for a while, so I'll let you guys go here. Might finish with one last little sneak peek before we go. But yeah, so again, I think this was a bit more of a ramble than any of the other videos done up until now. But I think the point I want to try and get across is that you know, don't feel that you're too limited by the problems with ComputerCraft, with the limitations that it has, because in many regards they can offer me advantages. They mean that you can take your mind away from the tricky things about you know, about the graphics and the effects, trying to get the right shaders and things, making your game attractive and things. You can actually start worrying about just the core mechanics and the gameplay, and thinking about those things as opposed to worrying about too much about the detailed bits and pieces can not only really make your games more interesting, more worthwhile to make, and a lot more fun, they can make you a better programmer. Just something to think about.